Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Homeland Security Today's State of Cyber and IT, a one-on-one with DHS CIO Eric Hysen and former CIO Luke McCormick. We're very, very excited to be featuring these states of different disciplines within Homeland Security. Many of you may remember that we hosted the administrator of TSA, David Pekoski, in February to talk about the state of our transportation security. And we're very, very pleased to be talking about cyber today. I think it never leaves the news. And frankly, Eric, I wouldn't want your job. So I appreciate that you have taken it over for the nation and looking at the executive orders and many of the priorities of the president, you are the man in charge. So with that, I know everyone is very pleased to hear what you have to say, and I will turn it over to Mr. Luke McCormick, who again was the former CIO of DHS and is also on the board of Homeland Security Today. So we're very, very excited to have the two of them chat. This is certainly an insider event with one CIO talking to another and really, really knowing what they're talking about. So as you know, HS Today is always working to bring you the true experts and the people who have done the job and that can really explain what's happening. So with that, Luke, I turn it over to you for an enlightening conversation. Also, we welcome questions. You can put them in the Q&A box and they will be weaved into the conversation as we go along. So if you're interested, we've submitted the questions you've already asked. So we have those and you can certainly participate as we go along. So thank you all for joining us.
All right, well, welcome everyone out there, and hello, Eric. Thanks for spending some time with the community here and looking forward to this conversation. I must say, we're live here at 7th and D. And I know a lot of you folks have been to 7th and D, and I have to report that it's very impressive up here. As I walked into the building and walked into the environment, good vibe here. So hats off to whomever remodeled that. It looks really good. Well, before we get to the classic start off, which is kind of the state of the state, of course, you and I talked a year ago, and I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask actually in front of that. And the first one, I would say that you've been here a year to date, you came on board and you had a lot of leadership in place. There's a lot more in place. When I look around, if I do say so myself, there's a lot of horsepower in the community at this point. Looks like for the most part, all your CIOs are on board. Another one inbound at FEMA at some point. You got all your leadership here on board, a lot of the deputies on board. A lot of capability here. I'm just curious as to, how does that make you feel when you look around and you see that? What do you think is, yeah, that's awesome, and I want to make sure I get 1, 2, and 3 done, or wow, that's awesome, but I need to make sure I get my sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and colonels in place to help them, that kind of thing, or all of the above.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for coming down, Luke. Thank you, Christina and the team, for setting this up. It's great to talk to everyone today. Yes, do I look at you or look at the camera?
I think you look at the camera.
All right. Not used to doing things in person. So yeah, you're right. We have an outstanding team across the DHS IT community, and that is really, I think, due to work that's been going on for years. I know that was a big focus of yours when you were CIO, of making sure we had strong people here at headquarters and at the components. I am thrilled to have an incredibly strong deputy CIO in Beth Capello, who complements all of the areas that I am not as steeped in my background. She is excelling in, and vice versa, along with an outstanding leadership team here. And as you said, really great folks in the components. Most recently, we had Yemi Oshinaye start as the CIO at TSA, and he's going to be doing incredible work there. We had Bob Costello join CISA, and we have an incredible team across the board. I think one of the things I'm really proud of from that is that we are seeing movement around the DHS community. Yemi went from USCIS to TSA. Bob was at CBP previously, now at CISA. And that collaboration where we are all learning each other's missions, we are able to makes us so much more effective at working together. We saw that, I think, more than anything at when we worked together on Operation Allies Welcome, the Afghan evacuation and resettlement, where just the IT leaders and the business and operations leaders from across the department were able to work together, collaborate, get our systems talking, our people talking in ways that previously would have taken months or years in a number of days to meet an urgent demand. And so I'm incredibly proud of the work we've been able to do there. But you asked about how I feel about the people. I'm thrilled with the team we've got. I also know the work of building a strong organization is never done. We, in particular, are working and have taken a number of steps, but still need to do much more to build out our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that we are recruiting, attracting, developing, retaining top talent that looks like America, looks like the people that DHS serves. And we've really stepped up our efforts there, but it's only becoming more and more critical as we continue building out our team for the next generation.
Definitely a journey there. When you came on board, I had listened to a couple of prior interviews you had done recently, and you were impressed by some of the things that were in place now, right? The environment's stable, right? There's a lot of other pieces in place, a lot of leadership in place, et cetera. I'm just going to flip that around. I'm curious as to what did you find that you thought, boy, the needle really didn't move much on this one in the last 4 years versus, wow, I'm really impressed with all the things that did move.
Maybe call it out right at the beginning. So I, as you noted, I think seeing the progress in our core operations have been really incredible. I think we've seen several of our components and offices that have really advanced the mark in integrating IT and the mission. You see just incredible work at CBP, at USCIS, some really strong emerging work at ICE and other places where we have IT and our operators sitting side by side, delivering much more quickly and much more impactfully. But I think the progress there has been uneven across the department. We definitely still have many offices, many components where they're operating still in a little bit more of a legacy mindset of how the IT teams work.
Fair statement.
Yeah. So that's been a focus of how do we not just have a few parts that are great examples, but how are we taking this progress and standardizing it, making sure that all across the department we have the right models in place, the right support to deliver on the mission.
Yeah, really sort of level it up. All right, so state of the state. It's been a year. Just give us a top line as to what have you discovered? What have you implemented? Sort of what's the state of the state in regards to the operating environment a year later?
Yeah. Well, I'll say first and foremost, can't start any discussion here without highlighting just the incredible work of the people. I knew I was so impressed coming in, as I've said before, with the incredible talent in the DHS IT workforce, feds and contractors alike. And I've only become more and more impressed over the last year. We've seen that through some incredible challenges. I mentioned Operation Allies Welcome, where we were across nearly every part of the department, along with the interagency, working 24/7 to support the largest humanitarian evacuation and resettlement effort in this country's history. And seeing the willingness with which our IT colleagues at CBP were willing to jump on a plane with a couple hours notice to deploy a remote processing center in the Middle East or in Europe on DoD bases. The willingness that our teams at USCIS and TSA and our Office of Biometric and Identity Management here at HQ were able to stand up new systems overnight, ensure that we were vetting individuals effectively and processing them quickly. That just commitment to mission has been so outstanding, and it's enabled some of these incredible accomplishments.
Yeah, no, please. I just want to scratch on that one because I know you probably think the same thing. We've had these conversations amongst the leadership many times where it's all hands on deck. These things get done. Incredible work gets done. And then you reflect back on that a little bit and you say, wow, how can we process 80,000, I think it was, individuals that we had no idea who these folks were, come together as a community, do it in record-breaking time. How do we take those kinds of capabilities and make it not so much a normal day, sort of a normal operating model, because, we don't expect people to jump on a plane and end up in the Middle East and in a 2-hour turnaround as far as getting on a plane, but just sort of generally, right? I know that platforms became a big deal at that point where you were enabling some things. What did we learn from that, and what could we take as far as continuing that into our daily MO?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and something we've been really focused on. I'll say two things. One, after Operation Allies Welcome, we sat down and did a hard look at what we learned, what worked, what we could improve on. And in particular, we'll thank Sunny Bagwali, the CBP CIO, who really took that to heart, and he and his team did an incredible job of understanding and applying those lessons learned to their operations. And we saw much more recently standing up the Uniting for Ukraine parole program, where different context, not the exact same evacuation model, but a similar environment where we were standing up an entire new program across the department in a matter of weeks. And what was incredible through that is we performed something that was just as complex as what we were doing during the Afghan evacuation, but without nearly as many of the 3 a.m. nights, without needing to have quite as many break glass moments. And in fact, I was remarking with some of my colleagues in the Office of Policy who were driving, we were driving the technical implementation of the program as they were figuring out the policy mechanics and getting decisions on how we were going to roll that out. And we had this incredible moment where we realized that the IT was moving faster than the policy. And that's not something we've seen happen very often in this department.
Go IT for the record. Love it.
So looking there, I think the other area is really pushing on our adoption of platforms as a service. And I think we're seeing really important work out of our development shop here and in multiple components on how we can leverage platforms as a service offerings to just be able to stand up these capabilities very quickly, just wash, rinse, repeat across the department. We saw that with our efforts on tracking vaccination status of our workforce and with several of these other efforts where we've needed to be very nimble and take these repeatable processes and get them moving in a matter of days and weeks.
Yeah, Phil, Rosa, Nagar, all that
Yes.
whole team over there taking care of business. So shout out to them. And it's interesting when we think about these events and these sort of hot washes and lessons learned, it's not a lot of lessons learned about what we could have done better. It's really lessons learned about the incredible things that we did and how do we incorporate them into sort of our daily MO, which is, I think, really cool. Let's talk. And by the way, as I'm glancing at my desktop or my laptop here, I'm not trying to read the emails. What I'm doing is actually waiting for some text to come in because we're interested in getting your questions to come in because we want to make this interactive as much as possible. So fire away on those questions and I'll weave those into this conversation. Let's talk about CTO. You've had David Larimore on board now for a few months. And I'm just curious, and I'm sure the community is curious about, what are sort of the conversations you're having with David? What are you asking David to do? And not so much David and his shop, but David thinking about the entire CTO community and bringing that community to bear on these big, sort of meaty, hairy problems.
Yeah, but great question. Dave's an incredible leader. We were really lucky to be able to entice him back from the private sector to rejoin government. Also, I think another example of where this cross-pollination, having the time he spent at ICE, has really informed his thinking because we want our CTO organization to be delivering value for the components. They are a governance shop in part, but we need to be sure that we are doing that in a way that is informed by what it actually means to be deploying technology on the ground. And so Dave's experience at ICE has really helped there. along with an incredibly solid foundation from Brian Campo, who is currently overacting as the deputy CIO at the Coast Guard and others. So our CTO team is still a relatively new part of the org. We created the first CTO when you were here, Mike Hermes, who did a lot of great work to really establish the parameters of the group. And a lot of the conversations that I have with Dave today are twofold. One is, how do we adapt our governance processes at the department to not necessarily mandate, but better incentivize modern and effective software development processes. We've been trying out a whole number of things on how we look at acquisition management and oversight in a more agile setting. We'll see if the mic picks up the incredible sounds of the freight trains coming by at 7th D right now.
We are live, and live at 7th D means freight train. So
that's where we are. The building. But so we've tried a number of things around agile acquisition management and governance, but fundamentally, our acquisition lifecycle is still waterfall. We're still talking about requirements analysis, completing your operational requirements document, getting approval to begin development, hitting IOC, FOC, then you're in O&M. And we know that that's not how modern software development in particular goes. That's still a model that applies to a lot of our other major acquisition programs across the department. But we still have more to do to think about how we tweak that process and how we use it to incentivize and make it as easy as possible for programs across the department to do things the right way with modern tools, with modern, reliable tech stacks, with DevSecOps pipelines and the like. So a lot of our conversation is there. The other big thing we're talking about is items that previously were in the realm of emerging tech. You think about AI and ML, you think about like facial recognition and matching as two that immediately come to mind, that are making a real impact across the department today. The prior administration issued a really important EO on federal use of AI, and we're looking at how we can take that out of the theoretical and into understanding where these technologies are already being used across DHS, and best ensuring that we are setting, following, and ensuring best practices for responsible use of these technologies department-wide. And so there is a lot of important work there that when you think about AI-assisted decision-making for our officers in the field is already real, and we need to be on top of how we think about the very real implications of things like algorithmic bias and the like. And so Dave and I are having a lot of conversations about that, and I'm excited about the work that's to come there.
What happened there?
I was just teeing up a question about the CTO's involvement in and sort of exercising, leveraging that horsepower when it comes to things like the Southwest border issue, that daunting task that you all face, a lot of disparate systems, et cetera. Does the CTO community get involved in that as well? Is that something from an architecture standpoint they're involved in? I'm just curious to know sort of what their role would be there.
Absolutely.
And things like that, yeah.
I think the roles, I mean, there are twofold. One, there's a special project. Let's figure out how all these systems fit together. A lot of early work that went on there. And then further, it's ensuring that we are continuing to get systems talking to each other, just drive a sort of more medium and long-term architecture that ensures these things are repeatable, even when we are not necessarily putting so much attention on some of these items from the leadership level. So there's been a lot of great work there. And I think the work we've done on Southwest border processing, to me, really is just highlights the maturity of the organization and the way that I want and we want DHS headquarters to play a role with components, which is not to say we're big DHS HQ, we're here to take over and we're going to build a giant new system that does everything that everyone will plug into, because DHS has tried that a number of times in very different contexts.
Right.
It always fails.
Right.
That's not how this
Agreed.
department works.
Mhm.
And what instead we did was we brought together the experts, the CIOs, the operators in each of the components, who had been working for years to do a lot of these things, leveraging work like the Unified Immigration Portal program at CBP that got started a couple of years ago. The work that Rochelle Henderson has been doing with her team at ICE to build out more modern applications over there. The incredible work towards digitization that the team at USCIS has been on a journey on, and said, tell us what you need and where headquarters can help. And the answer has been really twofold. One, coordination to help ensure that we're all skating to where the puck is going, and particularly when policy is changing so frequently, we've been able to play a really important role in keeping our the technical efforts across the department aligned with the department's policy priorities and most responsive to the secretary and the department's overall needs. And then two, juicing this up with money, or pouring more gas on the fire. And so that's where we've been able to come in through some use of the Technology Modernization Fund and other sources to ensure that these efforts are supported. So I think more than anything, what the border work has taught me is really defining the right role for us at headquarters to engage in some of these complex department-wide efforts.
Right, sort of directional, if you will, making sure there's good alignment. There's always systems that are being modernized, and we want to modernize those in a way that sort of aligns to this North Star that you all have painted. The money definitely helps. I want to talk about TMF since you brought it up. And not just TMF, but TMF, let's go to the Working Capital Fund. Is there one? Will there be one? Is that something that you all are thinking about internally, right? Each agency now has the authorization to do that, minus the one that was sort of the legacy Working Capital Fund, we'll call it. And also maybe your role as the DHS CIO. We'll get into your acting role in a little while, but in regards to maybe budget guidance that you're trying to lay down to the operating components about, hey, this is what we want to see coming up to us in regards to formulation time and in respect to modernizing these environments.
Sure. A lot there. And
yeah.
A lot that I have learned, because I am
Sure.
Anyone who knows, well, I'm not a budget guy. I have learned, I got in a crash course from folks in this work over the last year plus. The TMF has been a great opportunity for us, for the entire federal government, to get some much needed funding.
Big shot in the arm.
It was great to see that, and I think the team at OMB and GSA has been working really hard to improve the process and have been working closely with them there. We're thrilled to get the funding for the Southwest border. We have a couple of other projects in flight with them that I'm optimistic about as well. We are in the process of establishing our own internal IT modernization fund.
Nice.
Blanking on the.
You heard it here first.
Well, it was, for anyone who poured through the FY22 budget, it was authorized. It's or final some subsection there. It's a little unique for us. It's actually one that's established in a way that we are sharing it with our Chief Readiness Support Office around facilities modernization.
Interesting. Okay.
But it was also constructed in a way that we believe will allow us to access a very broad swath of unspent funds across the department. So we will, as we approach the end of this fiscal year, we're working with the CFO shop and our CRSO colleagues to look at how we set that up and use that to add even more fuel to several of these critical efforts. Yeah, sure.
Entry criteria into the fund, right? It's a great instrument. I think it turns into maybe not no year money, but multi-year money, if I remember right.
I'm blanking on the exact.
Yeah, so I think that's a very powerful instrument. I'm glad to see that one, you got it, and two, that you're going to be you're going to be implementing. I think that's really important too. In regards to budget guidance to the components and sort of your role as to, hey, this is what we want to see in your ask up to the department. How's that going? Yeah, you just working through.
We're working. This has been one where, and this is something that Stacy Marcotte, our acting CFO, and I talk about.
It was awesome. Shout out to Stacy.
FITARA laid out a very aggressive and needed baseline for CIO involvement in IT spending, but it has, as I think it has taken in the most of the government, it's taken some time for us to get to that level, both in our own internal competency and capabilities in our budget shops, but also in how we engage with our CFO partners and our partners across the department. So I'm now in I came in at the very tail end of the 22 cycle, so I was very slightly involved there, and then fully involved in 23, which is now under consideration on the Hill, and then we're in the midst of our internal 24 planning process right now. And the approach that Beth and I have talked about with Bob Dorr, who leads our budget shop, is really just making progress every year and working year over year to improve our ability to understand what is in all aspects of our IT budget, to empower our component CIOs to be able to effectively get involved and ensure that our overall IT spend is aligned to our priorities. So this year, we laid out for the first time ahead of the planning process a series of IT priorities to the components. And we asked components to note in their budget submissions internally their alignment to those priorities. We're going through those right now. We're also ensuring that our component CIOs are reviewing their budget submissions internally. And then we'll use that to work more at the department level. So we're making, I think, good progress, but it's an area that is a big shift for how we think about IT budget.
Incredible progress. I was there during FITARA, and all the CIOs across the community, they were just sort of chasing the spend as it was, right? Are you, aligned to the architecture, et cetera? That's kind of in the rears. And now much more maturity, as you're describing, where you're actually giving them budget guidance on, hey, here's what I also want you to ask for as far as funding, which I think is just demonstrates a level of maturity there, which I think is awesome.
I look at it as we get 3 cracks at IT spending, ranging from how far out it is, right? We get at the closest level our ITAR process before a contract is actually executed. We're reviewing there. We have some ability to change things there, but by the time you get to that stage, it's pretty baked. We're involved in the acquisition review board, making decisions at the program governance level before they even figure out their contract strategy. And that's a bit of a sweet spot. And then further out from that is the budgeting process.
The ask.
Building out now. So I think we're looking across our work to try to align our involvement across each of those 3 touch points to make sure we're using every one to advance alignment with our priorities.
And back to the TMF for a minute, where does that come into play? What's the future of TMF as far as where you sit and what you'd like to see? Hey, drop $1 billion in there every year. We use it for a variety of priorities. What's your sense of sort of that instrument and the funds associated to it?
Yeah, well, I think I know the team there has been doing some great work to look at how they're ensuring alignment to our top priorities for the administration, and the investments they've made show that, right? A heavy focus on cybersecurity, on zero trust across departments, on customer experience as well. I think the TMF I would love to see continuing funding there. I know that requested in the upcoming budget. What we're looking at within DHS is, can we really focus our use of the TMF, our proposals there, on projects that don't fit the normal budgeting process because of some reason of their nature? So
for example,
the border, I think, is a great example of that, because we requested funding that cut across 3 different components, and we were able to use the TMF request process to drive alignment across our component plans in a way that would have been almost impossible to do during the normal budgeting process. So that also, though, was challenging for the TMF team because it looked very different than a lot of the other proposals they were getting that were for one
Specific,
one system that needed one infusion for modernization. So that's what we're trying to think about is, can we use this very unique vehicle for very unique challenges? And I'm excited to do more of that.
Fantastic. Let's talk about the CDO. Same sort of double question. When you're talking to Mr. Horton, who's your new CTO or CDO, and what is that conversation like as far as what you're asking him to do, and more importantly, what you're asking that community to do? What are you expecting to happen?
Sure.
In regards to that.
Well, yeah, first, Mike Horton is doing great work as our chief data officer. He's also building on incredible work that Carlina Leto did to build out that organization. And now she's doing some great efforts at CBP. We're looking at two main things at CDO. The first step is understanding what we have. So we've launched a data inventory program that I've talked a little bit about in the past. That is something that is required under the Evidence Act, but we're taking it much further. We're looking to build out a living, constantly updated inventory of our data that helps us understand what we have, understand how we got it, and then also how it connects to other data that we have in other parts of the department. So this is a journey for us. It, again, is new ways that we're interacting with our components. And we're learning more about what resources the teams across the department need to be able to support this. But once we get an initial rev of that effort done and out the door, I'm expecting that we will start to see connections between our data, increase reuse of data across the department, and as well as better supporting some of our compliance and oversight functions in understanding questions about where our data is coming from and how we're using it. So that's one big area. The second thing we're talking a lot about is how we level up our data and analytics capabilities across the department. Our leadership is hungry for data to drive their decision making.
See it all the time.
As leaders of every organization are, but it is the traditional ways you would brief the secretary of issuing a department-wide data call that takes something like a month to get a report compiled is just not flying. We are constantly being called upon to look at data in new ways, not look at data in component silos. And every one of these major operational challenges we had, whether it's work on the border, whether it's Operation Allies Welcome or others, has led to new analytics needs. And so Mike and I are talking a lot, along with people like Mark Rosenblum, who leads our Office of Immigration Statistics and Policy, about how we build out increased and enhanced analytic capabilities department-wide. What are the tools our teams need? How can we better support this just voracious demand for data at all levels of the organization?
And no question. I mean, I don't think I've seen an executive out of DHS during their testimony, whatever it would be, that you're just almost cringing because you can tell that availability of data is just not right at their fingertips like they need to be. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about bug bounty.
Sure.
Sounds like that was a fantastic experience. I'm curious to know from your perspective, not only sort of the outcome, and I know that you've reported that, but what did you learn from that, right? I think about things like CDM and putting these instruments on the network. They light up like a Christmas tree, and we start to go and fix them. But I'm always thinking, okay, how do we get to the point where they're lighting up like a Christmas tree? And is there some way to do this better other than to just sort of instrument it, or in this case, crowdsource these kind of capabilities, which I think is awesome, by the way.
Well, thanks. Yeah, the Hack DHS program was a great starting point. We were able to find and remediate several critical vulnerabilities across our systems. What I learned from that, I think we're twofold. One, we need to be reliant on all manner of techniques and approaches when we're thinking about our cybersecurity approach, right? We're not, the bug bounty program to me is a perfect example of this shift from a conception that you will have a perfect defense system. That if we just build our cyber walls high enough, we never need to worry about what goes on within our systems, to this zero trust model, where we are acknowledging that we are going to see issues, and we are trying to take every approach we can to find them and then mitigate impacts when they do occur. So a bug bounty to me doesn't replace any of our other elements of our cybersecurity programs, but it's an important addition that acknowledges the reality of the cybersecurity today and the adversaries we face. I was surprised at how easy it was to get our components and our system owners on board.
Okay.
I was expecting, honestly, a little bit more of, wait, what are you asking me to do, Eric? You want me to let hackers into our systems?
Or maybe they had high confidence in the systems and were quickly humbled there.
But we got, and I got a little of that, but it was
Sure.
far less than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I think, was great to see. We're about to roll out the program to our second wave of systems. The other thing that it highlighted for me was the importance of agility in everything we do, because Log4j came out while we were running the Hack DHS program. We were initially focused on only 5 systems. And I was sitting around the table with our team, including Ken Bible, our CISO, Luis Coronado, who runs our operations, and we were trying to get our hands around just the scope of Log4j, which was a terrifying vulnerability, as I know it was for anyone that had such a complex cyber footprint, given the prevalence of that software. And we said, well, what better way to identify these uses of Log4j and vulnerabilities that we might never otherwise find through automated scanning than just by opening it up, saying just any system at DHS, you find a Log4j vulnerability, you tell us. And we were able to make that pivot very quickly. And that was, I think, a major factor in our being able to manage our response to that vulnerability as well.
A lot of good finds there. Getting a lot of good questions here. Let's talk about one that's come up a couple of times in the thread, customer experience. One of the things that you taught me very early on as you came in with the digital services team is the absolute laser focus on let's look at what the operator needs, wants, and does, and then work our way backwards. And maybe there's some technology in there, maybe there's a lot of technology in there, but we're absolutely going to get laser focused on that experience. How do you feel that's going inside the department at this point? I know that obviously there's an executive order out there. You've been doing and thinking and living and breathing customer experience way before that executive order came out. How's that going across the community? How's it going inside your own organization, the Phils of the world that are trying to, sort of address several different executives inside the building, the C-suite, so to speak?
Sure. Well, thanks. No, the customer experience EO that came out in December was, like, for me and a lot of others like me who came into government through USDS or some of these other programs, felt both like a culmination of many years of advocating for work like this, but also an evolution and a challenge, because we are taking this work to the next level. And that's how we've responded to the EO within DHS. We are embracing customer experience work more aggressively than any other department, which you might think is a little strange for the Department of Homeland Security, that we are not often a department you might immediately associate with customers and customer experience. But we actually interact with more members of the public every day than any other federal agency.
I heard you say that the other day. I was really impressed, right? That if you think about that, that's pretty daunting.
Absolutely.
And that's a wide swath, right? From the traveling public, those in need, you think of FEMA, criminals, right? All of the above.
Trade, our critical infrastructure partners in cybersecurity. Just it's such a wide reach. And so we're trying to take an approach that department-wide that one recognizes the breadth of that means we have an incredibly diverse set of customers and missions. We're not going to do a one-size-fits-all approach. And two, adapts it then differently to each mission. So we've stood up a customer experience steering committee across the department where we've got senior operators from each of our components who are helping to steer that work in addition to their IT counterparts. We're looking at what capabilities our components need. We're about to kick off a department-wide hiring event for design product skill sets to increase our ability to do this work across the board. And then we're also looking at what policies we need to be issuing to make customer experience focus into everything we do. So one of the lesser known parts of the CIO job is that I oversee our compliance with the Paperwork Reduction Act, which I think I've engaged with more than possibly any other former CIO has, which is the process by which anytime we are collecting information from the public, we need to understand the burden we are placing on them and ensure that we are going through an appropriate notice and comment process. Through that work, we tabulate that we impose 190 million hours of paperwork and forms burden on the public every year across the department. And so, along with Cass Sunstein, who's a senior counselor to the secretary and used to run OIRE at OMB, we sat down and said, well, what if we just set a big goal? We're going to lock 20 million of those hours off in next year. And we did that. We divvied it up across the department. We issued that challenge to our components a couple months ago. And over the next year, we're going to be looking to take a mix of approaches across policy changes, technology changes, and the like to eliminate at least 20 million hours of the burden we place on the public through these efforts, which I think will really drive home just the scope and the scale of the impact that the work on customer experience can have.
That's pretty impressive. I'm thinking about internally, sort of within the building, right? You've got Hysen, big wide swath of user base. You've got the classified systems and the collateral system, right? The networks and big wide swath, financial system, big wide swath. You know, what does that customer interface look like? How do you get that customer experience sort of, reality so that you're addressing those needs? So how does that work? Different for each one of those communities, or I'm just curious about that.
It is a little different in each case, but what is unique is that we need to ensure, and this is where we need support from the vendor community as well, that we have the right research, design, experience, skill sets as part of the teams that are working on all of our systems. So we are taking some approaches to build out our capacity to access out the CX and design skill sets. And then we want to ensure that this just becomes a default part of how we are building and buying new systems department-wide. So we're seeing that now. We launched with our great partners at INA and S&T a DHS Intel Mobile App for the Dhs Intel community, where our state and local law enforcement partners can get access to unclassified intelligence directly from their iPhones, soon on their Android devices, that they previously would have had to sit down at a desktop and log into view. And we really were sure in that process that we started from understanding our partners' needs. We brought in teams that did extensive research with our law enforcement partners, tested it out along the way, and have ended up with a much stronger product because of it. And that's work that we'll be looking to repeat with other key products as well.
Okay, let me ask a question about, I was asking a question about the industry engagement, right? The activity around that and the most effective way to do that. And then you've got the CTO in there looking at different types of technology. You're doing the bug bounty, great partnership there. What's most useful for you all? What's not useful for you all?
Other than the default answer of the unsolicited email not being the most useful, but the I think the areas that we've laid out that we've talked about here, as well as a few others, are ones that we know we need deeper engagement with our vendor partners. We know we need to be better at building customer experience into
CDO stuff,
everything
yeah,
that we are
absolutely.
building.
We'll talk about zero trust in a minute.
Yeah. We know that we need to be asking significantly more of our vendors on managing the security of their own IT supply chains. We need most beneficial to me is feedback on how we get that right. So we're trying out several different things on supply chain, so cybersecurity, and are really appreciating the feedback that we are getting on what's working, what's not, what is overly burdensome, what will lock out our ability to work with small and innovative businesses, what will further allow them to flourish. So really appreciate the feedback there. Similarly on customer experience, helping us think through how we should be designing our future solicitations. You're hearing a lot about what we are looking for with our technology roadmap across the department. It looks like more focus on CX and design. It looks like more of a focus on data sharing and integration, not silos and proprietary systems. It looks like a much deeper understanding of our cyber supply chains. But we need constant feedback on getting it right in asking for the right things as we are furthering our solicitations and our work with you all.
Let's staying on the cyber thread. A lot of questions about zero trust and sort of the state with that. Mobile, hardening the mobile environment, et cetera. Just tell us, where are we with the cyber hygiene activities across the department, zero trust implementation, post SolarWinds, and maybe a little bit on mobile, right? That's an area that, doesn't go unnoticed. That I think it's 80% of the DHS workforce is in a mobile environment, minus the COVID thing. I'm talking about the folks, the men and women on the lines, et cetera. But oftentimes their mobile device it's not fully enabled, right? They can look at their calendar, they can look at email, but they can't even, in some cases, approve time cards or, look at a case or, slap a fingerprint, and I think that's the kind of stuff that most of them are looking to do, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it is the capabilities that we offer on mobile is a direct tie to security, right? The more we can enable our workforce to get their job done using the tools they want to use in the locations where they want to be, the less they're going to try to find workarounds, the less they're going to try to forward things to personal email or be trying to print something out at home or all things that we'd rather not see. So there is a critical connection there. Our cyber hygiene work is still evolving. We did we've done a few different experiments because that's really what we're trying to do here. We started out saying, should we adopt what was, I think, then the original CMMC model at DHS? We did an example evaluation with a vendor, found that that's probably not going to be the route we want to go. Ultimately, DoD reached a similar conclusion on that and has been adapting their program as well. We recently issued a pretty detailed self-assessment questionnaire to a subset of our vendors on their cyber hygiene practices and have been evaluating that data. We're looking to see whether we can look at ways in which we can use those self-assessments that hopefully are not quite as burdensome as needing to pay a third-party assessor to do a deep dive, and then use that to help better target areas where our teams are going to dig in. And then we're also following and looking to implement ongoing work is directed by the President's Cyber Executive Order department-wide, particularly things like software bills of materials that if implemented appropriately, have the promise to be completely transformative. You imagine the next Log4j happens and we are able to automatically and automatically search through all of our SBOMs to understand the presence of that software potentially deep in the supply chain of one of our vendors. It would be a completely different ballgame for how we're able to respond to an incident like that. But we also know with all of these things that there is so much movement going on across the federal government that we want to be lockstep with the direction CISA is leading, the direction that the White House is going, and avoid placing duplicative or conflicting requirements on industry from different departments.
Right, and be able to do that kind of capability, that analysis, that machine speed, I think is definitely a game changer. We will extend till 12:10, by the way. So that's just an FYI for you all, since we lost a little bit of time there. Let's talk about the NOSC, right, and the activity going on there. What is a NOSC? How does that work? And then, sort of what's the end game there? What's the outcome we're expecting once we have a fully realized capability there?
Yeah, the NOSC is really the brainchild of our Deputy CIO, Beth Capello, in consolidating initially 5 different NOCs and SOCs at DHS headquarters alone into one network operations and security center. And we've taken several of those initial steps closely aligned with a whole host of priorities around SOC consolidation, but further are using this as our platform to build out enhanced service delivery for our operations centers across the department. So we are no longer contracting for embedded NOCs and SOCs in individual systems. We're making sure there are clear models for how to plug in to monitoring services and support services from our NOSC in each case. Some of our components are taking services from the NOSC directly. And then we've also built out, in partnership with CISA, a cybersecurity service provider assessment program where we are, through teams from headquarters and the components at DHS, we are evaluating other agency, including DHS component and some other agency SOCs, assessing their capabilities based on models that DoD has set out in the past, and ensuring that if a component or an agency will continue to operate their own SOC, it will meet these minimum required levels of competencies, and if not, they'll be able to get services through us.
Is that exclusively in an unclassed environment, or do you see that sort of same capability being used for, say, HSDN, CLAN, et cetera? Any thoughts on that?
Starting unclassed for now.
Yeah.
We'll certainly build up. I think the idea will be to certainly build up as we go.
CISA, you mentioned that relationship, a lot of moving parts there. Always look to have the DHS CIO be an early adopter of their tools, techniques, capabilities. How's that relationship going? Sort of what can we expect in the future there as far as you all being an early adopter of these different types of capabilities?
Yeah, we when I was at Google, the phrase that was used all the time was "eat your own dog food" to try out internal products, and that's the view I take of our relationship with CISA. We want to be their first and best customer, and then we also want to be. I view a part of my role as advocating for partnering with them across my CIO colleagues across the government as well. CISA is growing their scope, their mission, their capabilities so quickly. And the team over there is just doing incredible work. We're looking to, we're partnering closely with them on the bug bounty is a great example. That was made possible through work that the cybersecurity division at CISA has been starting.
Okay.
And Jen Easterly and I had a lot of discussions about the point of Hack DHS is not just to improve DHS's security, it's to show an example that other agencies can use. And we have been clear to set up the program and talk about it in ways that will show what's possible to our federal colleagues. So
really leading by example, which I think is a good catch. When you're talking to the CIOs, bring us into a CIO council meeting, if you will, just sort of, what are those conversations about these days? Sort of what is top of mind? I know there's sort of the laundry that has to get cleaned every week, every month, however often you do these. But what are the sort of bigger, broader types of discussions that you all are having in those council meetings these days?
Sure. They bring them in. They're all Zoom like this these days, which has been actually one of the challenges. It's been
Sure.
tougher to meet all my other CIO counterparts. But Claire has done an incredible job in a really very challenging time to step into a role of federal CIO. She has really ensured that the OMB, that her office and that the council meetings are focused on what we all need to execute our missions, as well as ensuring that we are all tracking the myriad of complementary programs and equities to our roles as CIO, whether that's working with CISA on various fronts, whether that is work that the President's Management Council is undertaking, which includes customer experience, as well as items on the future of work that have serious IT equities, whether that's ensuring that relevant GSA programs are supported. So I think a lot of our discussion is really making sure we're all able to speak with a unified voice as a CIO community and make a maximal impact in just the flurry of activity that's going on and many relevant topics across the government.
How about internally, DHS, your council, of those top three? What are the top three topics that you're driving there? Top three priorities within your community?
Yeah, recently we've been talking a lot about budget because we are in planning season right now, and that has been how do we work together to ensure all of our components, all our CIOs are appropriately empowered and engaged in their work. We've been talking a lot about hiring, and which includes a focus on DEI, as well as what our components need and our CIOs need to effectively build out their organizations. And then also on some of these new topics, we've done several sessions on customer experience with the council, where we've been clear what parts of this are IT, what parts of this go beyond IT, and how can we learn from different models that components are taking on CX, on other areas. Across the board, I'm really trying to ensure that we're using it as a forum for learning, that there's so much great work happening across the department that we, whenever I see a component doing something that I say, oh, this was really interesting, I'd like another component other components should learn from that. We'll try to get some discussions and presentations set up because while we have such unique missions, we are all working on many of the same problems across the board.
So let's talk about hiring for a minute. Let's talk about CTMS. For those that might not know what CTMS is, maybe give them 30 seconds on that. But yeah, so how is the hiring game working these days? How does CTMS help that? And then how do we ensure that we get the right type of diversity into that conversation?
Sure. So CTMS, which is now publicly known as the DHS Cybersecurity Service, is our new personnel system that was many years in the making that we're using currently at CISA and in my office at headquarters to.
But not at the components.
Not yet.
Okay.
It's coming.
All right.
But there are a number of different, it is such a big change. And actually, it's one of the things we are finding. We had our first employees on board into CTMS at CISA just last week.
Congratulations.
And, it was a big moment, but we have a lot more to do. And so it is more or less a wholesale rewrite of the civil service for cyber talent. And it was really the master work of Angie Bailey, our former Chico, and her team, who sat down with vast swaths of the private sector, of others in government pushing the edge, and looked at what an entirely reimagined personnel system could look like. You're not submitting your giant federal resume. You're not going through a typical federal resume review or structured interview. You're actually doing technical assessments where you're evaluated on your cyber technology skills. And then when you come in, you're not limited to a rigid career track where you have to apply for another job at the next GS level. There is the same type of natural flexibility and career progression that you would see in a private technology company. So we are working very hard across my team, our Chico office, as the CISA team, to hire using that new system now. But it's one of only of several tools and efforts we've got underway on hiring. Hiring cyber and tech talent is hard everywhere. Right?
Sure.
It is. Federal government has some unique challenges. DHS has some unique challenges, but it's an incredibly competitive talent pool. We're also looking at how we can push the boundaries on location as well. So our NOSC hires were opening up in Stennis, Mississippi, and Chandler, Arizona, in addition to the NCR. And we're looking to see where we can go even further in allowing either remote or flexible work to give us access to talent in other parts of the country that may not have quite as competitive a market as DC.
We only have a few more minutes, and I wanted to make sure we talked about the current role you're in, which is dual hat, right? I think you're assuming the duties of, if I remember
Something
right, something like
yes.
that. Acting USM, Deputy USM. My apologies, Tex. And also obviously continuing the role of the CIO. As you sit in sort of that chair and you're looking around sort of across the CXO community, what's that looking like to you? And I'll cheat a little bit. If you could fast forward, right? Because it looks like, based on what I can tell in the news, the last nominee has been pulled. So you're going to be there at least a little while, perhaps. What are you trying to accomplish there? Obviously, the secretary's got their priorities. You're trying to take care of business across those CXOs. I'm curious to know, I'm gonna sort of rapidly hit you with some things like, hey, tell us what do you want to see in a year as far as border systems are concerned? What do you want to see in a year as far as the NOS is concerned, the CDO, the CTO, so that kind of thing, sitting where you're sitting?
Yeah, so Secretary Mayorkas asked me to step into the acting DUSM role in December as he really laid out an incredibly ambitious set of priorities for the department's management and operations. And so it's been an incredible privilege to get to work with Tex Alice and the whole management team to help deliver on those. A lot of that focus is on our how do we better deliver for our workforce. We have a workforce of 250,000 people across the country that are putting their lives on the line across the world. We're putting their lives on the line for our nation's security, who are never hesitating to go above and beyond, and are just giving their all in incredibly challenging circumstances. And the secretary wants to be sure that we are delivering back to them on what they need, whether that is in better training and development opportunities, whether that is better a budget that supports their needs. We saw the FY23 budget submission for the department was one of the largest year-over-year increases in the department's history. Whether that is technology and acquisition programs to support them and aid them in executing on their mission. Whether that is facilities that allow them to get the job done, or any of the other areas where the management lines of business are involved. So more than anything, the focus is better delivering for our workforce and giving them the tools, the resources, the people that they need to do their jobs.
So certainly sitting in that position, you have the ability to really sort of turn the gears and pull the knob, so to speak, in regards to that, because you're across that spectrum. That's interesting that that is the focus, and I think it's a really important one, right? To give back to those men and women. All right, so on the CIO hat side,
Sure.
just fast forward a year. What's it look like in regards to the southwest border environment? Well, what's your sort of marker in your head? Hey, we've done some great work. We've done yeoman's work in regards to these systems over the last year. What do you want that to look like in a year from now?
Sure. On the border, I think I look forward to the level of collaboration we've got today really being cemented as regular order of business. Along with, we'll have some critical milestones in the next year on digitizing A files, which are currently in their very early stages, and I'm hoping that in a year should be the norm, or well on their way to being the norm of digital A files and immigration records, rather than thick paper files that accompany a non-citizen as they move through the process.
Security posture. What do you want that to look like?
In a year, we should be out of the experimenting on our supply chain cybersecurity efforts and into executing. It should be clear to our industry partners where we are going and what they are going to need to do to come along with us.
CDO community. What do you want that to be focused on at that point?
The CDO community has done great work to date at foundational governance, and now, a year from now, I want to see our CDO team and the community across the department in a new operational posture where they are actually providing analytics capabilities and data discovery capabilities to our teams.
Budget formulation, TMF, I'm going to kind of lump all that together. What do you want that to look like in a year?
I hope we'll have at least one or two more TMF awards, but depending on our great friends at OMB and GSA, and have our internal funds stood up and either ready or about to issue some of our initial projects.
CTO community.
Really, we should be leading the government in responsible use of emerging technologies, AI-related technologies. It should be very explicit to the public how we are using these technologies and how we are not using them in ways that can better inform the public discourse.
Operational posture.
Continue the great progress, but further support future and hybrid work, being able to support we've done a great job at supporting largely remote headquarters workforce through the pandemic. I think the next year becomes a lot of a focus on enabling hybrid collaboration models through different hardware and software elements.
Hiring maturity, I'll call it that, to sort of put that into a basket. What do you want that to look like in a year?
I'm looking forward to having significantly fewer cyber vacancies across the department.
Okay, fair enough. How about on your, well, let's give you an opportunity to leave a few minutes for you to give some closing thoughts.
Sure.
Right. I'm just mindful of time there. Yeah. It's
fun rapid fire.
Yeah. I thought you'd like that. So
I do. I think we actually covered a good amount there. No, I really appreciated the conversation, appreciated the questions. Wish you could have dug into more. I apologize for the glitches. There's nothing like having two CIOs fumble over a computer trying to.
I wasn't going to mention it.
I'll always point it out. But I just will reiterate what I said up front, that in the past year and a half, I've been just so impressed by our workforce and our partners and the ability to go above and beyond and support the mission, and the ways in which everyone watching, everyone that we all work with, show up every day, large and small, to support the Homeland Security mission, to support our employees across the globe, and I am just thrilled to have the privilege of being a part of it.
And I can say, listen, on behalf of the entire community, I talk to a lot of these folks off and on, and I don't think it's been any better than it is right now in regards to the leadership that's in place, the alignment, et cetera. and we're all here to help push this agenda as hard and fast as we can while it's this good, so to
Yeah,
speak.
you get to stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Bye now.
Well, I just want to say a quick thank you to you both. And Mr. Hysen, we certainly appreciate your transparency. You are being extremely transparent in your leadership. We appreciate the communication with not only industry, but also the community generally. And we appreciate the level of specificity. So I know that's a big, to hear general conversations are fine, but your level of specificity is really helpful for everyone. So thank you for your service to DHS and the country. And Luke, thank you for your service, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye now.
afternoon, everyone.